My sister faked illness for years to ruin my life. So I exposed her at family dinner and watched her beg as everyone walked away. Let me go back to the beginning. My younger sister Morgan was born 2 months prematurely, bluer than a robin's egg, and spent the first 3 years of her life hooked up to tubes and machines at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. Naturally, my parents were very protective of her. They'd camp out by her bedside, by every toy she pointed to, and demand that I stop going out with friends to watch her. At first, I assumed this was correct. She was my chronically ill baby sister after all. But then Morgan got older and healthier. She no longer needed oxygen tanks or feeding tubes and could live entirely normally. However, by this point, she had discovered that being unwell got her anything she desired, whether it was material possessions or simply pity and attention. Her headaches began to inexplicably return whenever she had algebra homework. Mom and Dad would whisk the textbooks away, replacing them with Ben and Jerry's Chunky Monkey and Netflix access. By the time Morgan was 11 and I was 16, she had mastered her act. And it bothered me since her pain only struck during my best times. When I made varsity soccer at Lincoln High, she got inexplicable stomach cramps, forcing my parents to leave my first game early. When I was accepted to Penn State, she fell during my celebratory supper at Olive Garden, and we spent the night in the emergency room at Jefferson Hospital, where physicians discovered nothing wrong. The worst part was that she would smirk at me when our parents weren't watching. She even tried making painful looks in the bathroom mirror. I tried to show my parents once, but Morgan had already told them I was resentful of the attention she required for her condition. My lover, Ethan, lasted 8 months until Morgan got to him. She fabricated bogus screenshots of text chats in which I allegedly branded her a faker and wished she would simply leave. The split took place at Starbucks on Market Street. Ethan pushed his iPhone across the table to show me the proof Morgan had assembled. He refused to be with someone who mistreated their sick sister. Morgan texted me a selfie wearing the Eagles sweater Ethan gave me for Christmas. That was my breaking point. For 5 years, I'd watched her steal everything that was important to me. So, I began to watch her intently, far more closely than anyone else had. I saw a pattern. Every time Morgan was in agony, she grasped her right side, whether it was her head, stomach, or kidneys. She always called for Mom first, never Dad. Her pain was consistently scored between 8 and 10 on the medical scale. And she usually recovered in exactly 2 to 3 hours, which was just enough time to undo everything I had planned. Once I recognized this trend, I devised my strategy. And this Sunday at our monthly family dinner, it went down better than I could have imagined. We were having our usual meeting with all of the aunts, uncles, and cousins at Grandma Helen's house in Germantown, with around 20 people jammed around her large oak dining table, which had been in our family for decades. 20 minutes before supper, I excused myself to the upstairs bathroom and filmed a video on my phone. In that video, I indicated that I was ready to make a phony statement about being promoted at my marketing agency downtown. I foresaw Morgan's reaction. She would wait for the ovation to go down before grabbing her right side and whimpering for Mom. She'd rate her agony as an 8, 9, or 10. She would need to lie down right away and ask her mother to drive her to the hospital if the agony did not subside within 20 minutes. During dinner, I stood up and clinked my wine glass with a butter knife, drawing everyone's attention. The talk ceased as 20 pairs of eyes fixed on me. Then I revealed that I had been promoted to senior account manager with a significant raise at Henderson and Associates. Everyone exploded into applause and congrats. Uncle Brian caressed my back. My cousins Brittany and Ashley held me tightly, and Mom had tears of pride in her eyes. The sound of clapping boomed through Grandma's dining room, along with congratulations and jokes about how I could finally afford to leave my studio apartment. Uncle Brian joked about me becoming the family's wealthy niece, while Grandma was already discussing how I could assist her with her prescription expenditures. I kept a grin on my face, greeting and thanking everyone, but my eyes were fixed on Morgan. She was sitting at the far end of the long table between my cousin Jake and Aunt Melissa, mindlessly moving around the mashed potatoes on her plate. For a brief period she appeared to be truly thrilled for me, almost. But I knew her too well. I noticed the exact moment something changed in her expression. It was modest as it often is, a small constriction around her eyes and a slight stiffness of her shoulders. She looked around the table, observing how everyone was looking at me, how they were truly happy about my accomplishment, and how I was shining. Then it began. First, Morgan stopped eating. She dropped her fork onto her dish with a gentle clink, which only a few people closely noticed. Aunt Melissa inquired as to her well-being, but Morgan simply shook her head with the forced smile she employed to appear courageous in the face of unbearable suffering. I kept talking with Uncle Brian about the intricacies of my promotion, brazenly lying about responsibilities I didn't have and a salary that didn't exist, but part of me was counting down like a Swiss watch. 3, 2, 1. She moved her hand to the right side of her abdomen. The initial moan was hardly inaudible, a quiet sigh that blended into the background sounds of discussions. But Morgan understood exactly how to project her voice, giving the impression that she was attempting to hide something, when in fact she wanted everyone to hear. My cousin Jake, who was sitting next to her, paused midway through his narrative about his new job at the fire department. "Morgan, is everything okay there?" he inquired, leaning toward her with worry. "It's nothing," she said softly, but loud enough for at least half the table to hear. Her voice had that distinct courageous tone mixed with a trace of vulnerability that always warmed people's hearts. "Just a little pain," she said quietly. And so began the show I'd seen so many times before. Aunt Melissa immediately turned to face Morgan, forgetting her talk with Grandpa Joe about the Eagles' chances this season. "What kind of pain, sweetie? Where does it hurt?" Morgan curved slightly in her chair, a flawless performance measured to the millimeter. Not overly dramatic as that would appear artificial, just enough to indicate real discomfort. "It's here on the right side," she explained, pressing her fingers against her body. It came out of nowhere. I witnessed the shift in real time. Conversations gradually became quieter. Glances eventually shifted toward Morgan. My promotion, which had been the center of attention minutes before, faded into the background, replaced by the constant familial concern that enveloped my sister. Mom, who had been laughing with me at Uncle Mike's account about his awful fishing trip, abruptly stopped laughing. That emotion I recognized so well began to spread over her face, the maternal terror Morgan knew how to instill with surgical precision. "Morgan, what happened, honey?" Mom was already partly up from her chair and her napkin had fallen on the hardwood floor. Morgan always looked at Mom first, never at Dad. I'd seen this trend years ago. "Mom, it's hurting quite a bit," she said quietly, her voice shaking just enough. Not too much, not too little, just enough to sound authentic but not so much that it appeared theatrical. Dad, like always, shifted into problem-solving mode. "What kind of pain?" "Cramping, burning, sharp." "It's a dull ache," Morgan said, closing her eyes as if trying to convey it correctly, "but really intense and it's getting worse." Grandma Helen crossed herself. Uncle Brian scowled, worried. My cousin Ashley had already asked if anyone had Advil in their purse. The entire room's attention had turned from me to Morgan, as if water was whirling down the drain. I remained smiling, joining in the supposition about what was causing Morgan's anguish. But inside I was captivated by how the machine worked. It was like witnessing a conductor direct an orchestra. Each sigh, display of anguish, and statement was tailored to elicit the exact appropriate reaction. "On a scale of 1 to 10? Dad inquired, already taking the Honda keys from the sideboard near the table. Over the years, our family has developed a hallowed ritual around this topic. Morgan hesitated for a moment, as if assessing the severity of the agony. Another excellent touch. If she responded instantly, it might appear rehearsed. It's an 8, she finally answered, her voice becoming softer. Maybe a 9. Of course it was. It was never less than 8. Never give a 10, it's too dramatic or evident. Always between 8 and 9. Enough to cause concern but not enough to raise suspicions. I saw the entire family dynamic shift around Morgan's sorrow. Aunt Melissa began informing everyone about her kidney stones. Grandma whispered about how the poor girl had been through so much since she was young. My cousin Jake had already suggested that it might be appendicitis. In less than 5 minutes, my promotion had faded into the past. Morgan curled slightly more, using her second hand to support the first. "Mom, I think I need to lie down," she said softly, but clearly enough for everyone to hear. And then she did something that made me want to shout. She grinned after gazing directly at me for a second when she was certain no one else was looking. A little smile, almost unnoticeable, but it was there, the smile of someone who has just scored the winning goal. "Maybe we should take her to Temple Hospital," Mom suggested, already rising up entirely. "Melissa, can you drive? I'm too nervous." At that point, something inside me snapped. It wasn't fury anymore. It was something colder, more calculated. Everyone jumped up, ready to turn what should have been a night of celebration into another dash to the ER. I stood up too, but instead of taking my handbag, I grabbed my phone. "Wait," I murmured, my voice seeming calmer than I felt. "Before we go running to the hospital, there's something you all need to see." Morgan stared at me, and for the first time, I noticed something odd in her expression. A trace of mistrust, perhaps even fear. However, she was too committed to the act to stop now. "Riley, this isn't the time for this," she replied, her voice still weak and pained. "I'm in a lot of pain." "I understand how much pain you're in," I responded, unlocking my phone. "And I know exactly when it's going to pass." Aunt Melissa scowled. "Riley, what do you mean by that?" I held the phone up, my finger lingering above the play button. "I recorded a video 20 minutes ago. You're all going to want to watch this." Morgan became utterly still. Her hand was still pressed against her right side. Her expression was still painful, but something had changed. It was as if she felt the ground was shifting beneath her feet, but didn't know why. "What video?" Mom said, still split between concern for Morgan and interest in what I was doing. I gazed directly at Morgan, capturing the exact instant she realized something was seriously wrong. Her eyes expanded slightly, but she couldn't give up the act now, especially in front of the whole family. "A video that's going to explain a lot," I remarked, pressing play. My voice came out clear and firm over the phone speaker. "It's 6:40 p.m. on Sunday. In 20 minutes, I'm going to make a false announcement about a promotion at work during family dinner. When I do this, Morgan will wait for the applause to finish. Then she'll grab the right side of her body and call for Mom. She'll rate the pain as 8 or 9. She'll ask to lie down, and if she follows her pattern, she'll suggest going to the hospital in exactly 15 minutes. The room was so silent that I could hear the tick-tock of Grandma's grandfather clock. All eyes were drawn to Morgan, who had been utterly frozen, her hand remaining firmly attached to her right side as if it had been superglued there. "She always holds the right side," my recorded voice said brutally. "No matter what type of pain it is, the head, stomach, or kidney, it's always on the right side. Always call specifically for Mom first. And she always recovers in 2 to 3 hours, just enough time to ruin any important moment of mine." Grandma Helen was the first to discover her voice. "Morgan, is this true?" Morgan attempted to recover, but I could see panic developing in her eyes. "I don't know what Riley is talking about," she muttered, attempting to revert to her sorrowful tone. "I'm really in pain. Don't you believe me?" "I'm not done yet," I said, pausing the first video. "That was just the appetizer." I moved on to the next folder on my phone, which I had methodically compiled over the previous few months. "Do you want to see what really happened at my high school graduation?" "Riley, stop this," Morgan said quietly, but her voice had lost its dramatic softness. Now it sounded harsh, almost frightening. I started the next video. I'd obtained security camera footage from Lincoln High through my friend Kevin, who worked in the IT department. The grainy image shows Morgan in the side hallway near the water fountains 5 minutes before the wedding started. She was totally alone, checking her phone. Then she abruptly put the phone aside, looked around to ensure no one was looking, and began practicing. My sister was rehearsing painful expressions alone in the corridor. She scowled, lifted her palm to her chest, and made various grimaces at the reflection in the glass trophy case. She was literally practicing whatever expression would be the most convincing. "My God," Aunt Melissa said quietly, her hand flying to cover her lips. "Wait, there's more," I remarked, proceeding to the next file. "Remember when Ethan broke up with me? When he said I was cruel to my sick sister?" Morgan turned pale. "Riley, don't. These are the original messages she sent to Ethan pretending to be me." I showed the screenshots I had recovered from her phone's cloud backup, which was another favor from my tech-savvy pal Kevin. "Look at the dates and times. She waited for me to leave the house to use my laptop and create fake social media accounts. The messages were vicious, saying horrible things about Morgan that I would never think, let alone write. But they were written in my style, with slang. They used details that only someone who knew me intimately would include. Dad seized my phone with shaky hands and read each message. His expression became darker with each line. "She even researched your work schedule," I said. "She claimed to know when I wouldn't be home. She created a fake Instagram profile with my photo, added Ethan as a friend, and started sending these messages pretending to be me. When he confronted me about them, she acted shocked and said, 'I must have let someone use my computer.'" "Morgan, this can't be true," Mom whispered. "But it is," I responded, feeling a terrible delight as Morgan's house of cards started to disintegrate. "And there's more. Much more." I proceeded to the next file, an audio recording I had secretly made the previous month with a voice recorder app. "This is Morgan on the phone with her friend Tara last week." Morgan's voice came through clearly on the phone. "It's really easy, Tara. You just need to know the right buttons to push. Mom gets desperate if I say it's a headache on the right side. But if I say it's stomach pain, she takes longer to react. And it always works better when Riley is having a good day. Then everyone feels sorry for me and gets annoyed with her for being insensitive. Tara laughed during the recording. You're terrible, Morgan. But your sister really is kinda stuck up anyway. She thinks she's better than everyone. Morgan continued, she was always the favorite. Always had everything handed to her. At least when I fake being sick, I managed to get them to pay attention to me too. And it's fun watching her get frustrated. The hush that ensued was deadly. Morgan was as white as a sheet, trembling. And this time it was real. Grandma Helen's disappointed voice pierced through the air. Morgan, how could you? There's more, I stated repeatedly. Do you want to see the video of when she fainted at my 18th birthday party? Morgan attempted to stand up, most likely to flee, but Uncle Brian softly but firmly grabbed her shoulders. Stay there, Morgan. I think you need to hear this. The footage showed Morgan in our backyard, hidden behind the barbecue grill 10 minutes before her grand debut. She was experimenting with several ways to faint on the grass, determining which angle would be the most convincing and least risky. For 15 minutes she practiced falling sideways, forward and backward. She chose the side fall since the grass was gentler. My cousin Jake let out a sound that was half surprised laughter and half grunt of astonishment. Morgan, this is sick. It's not sick, I finally responded, putting down the phone. It's calculated. Systematic. She turned manipulation into an art form. Morgan eventually exploded. Okay, damn it. Do you want the truth? I faked it. I faked it sometimes, yes. But you don't understand. The tears began to flow again, but this time they were different. Tears of rage, frustration, and of someone caught red-handed. Do you think it's easy being Riley's sister? Riley the smart one, Riley the popular one, Riley who never does anything wrong. Do you know what it's like to grow up in her shadow? So you decided to sabotage me, I stated bitterly. Destroy my relationships, ruin my important moments, make everyone think I'm a cruel and insensitive sister? Because you had everything. Morgan yelled, abandoning her act of being sick. You always had everything. And me? I was just the sister who almost died as a baby. The only way anyone paid attention to me was when I was sick. But you weren't sick, Dad remarked, his voice low but filled with genuine sadness. You were lying for years and sabotaging your sister's life in the process. And stealing money, Mom finished, tears flowing down her cheeks. Morgan, how could you be so cruel? Cruel? Morgan chuckled bitterly. Do you want to know what's cruel? Growing up watching your sister get congratulated for breathing, while you need to almost die for someone to notice you. You were never almost dying, I yelled. At least not in the last 5 years. You were acting, manipulating, lying. Because it worked. Because it was the only thing that worked, she exclaimed back. The room was stunned into silence. One by one, family members stood up and distanced themselves from Morgan. Uncle Brian shook his head with contempt. Aunt Melissa grabbed her handbag with shaky hands. Even Grandma Helen, Morgan's staunchest supporter, sat transfixed in her chair, staring at her youngest grandchild as if she were a stranger. 15 years, Mom whispered. 15 years of believing, worrying, canceling plans, losing sleep. And I lost 15 years of my life too, I remarked. 15 years being treated as the cruel and insensitive sister. 15 years watching my important moments get destroyed. 15 years being blamed for not having enough patience with the sick sister. Morgan raised her face, tears streaking through her makeup. Riley, I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. Now you're sorry? I inquired. Now that you've been caught? I looked around the table at my family and saw a mixture of shock, sadness, and betrayal on their faces. You all know now. You all know what kind of person she really is. You know what she did to me, to this family, for years. I grabbed my handbag and approached the door. Morgan's genuine, not fake, tears followed me. Where are you going? Mom inquired, tears flowing down her cheeks. Away from here, I said. Away from this toxic dynamic and especially away from her. I pointed at Morgan without looking in her direction. I'm going where I should have gone years ago. I'm going to build a life where people like her can't reach me. The door crashed behind me but not before Morgan began screaming. This time the pain was genuine, not fabricated, the misery of finally having to confront who she truly was. And for the first time in years, hearing her sorrow did not make me feel guilty. It made me feel liberated. Sometimes the truth hurts more than any lie could. However, sometimes the agony is exactly what is required to finally recover.